been speaking, will speak to us tonight with updates on the security situation in the conflict area of Boku after latest attacks on immigration officers left one dead. Stay with us. We'll get updates from the Upper East Regional Minister on Ghana tonight. Who is to blame for the economic woes of this country, the leaders or the followers? We continue the conversation started on the maiden edition of the Economic Sustainability Summit held earlier today. Professor Stephen Adey joins us together with Daniel Yao Domelevo. We'll have a conversation on this matter tonight. Also, the school feeding program is in dire straits in some parts of the country as caterers threaten strike over monies the government owes them. Tonight, we delve into the issues. Stay with us. Let's hear from you. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. The hashtag we're using is Ghana Tonight on Facebook and Twitter. Let's get talking. This issue that never goes away with school feeding caterers who are owed. What's the video that we have a copy of? They turned up at the Ashanti Regional Minister's office. He just snapped them. He says what they did was illegal. How about the concern of the traders as well? That's what we're going to be focusing on tonight and the school feeding program itself. Stay with us. Let's get into Ghana Briefs. Panelists at the Three Business Economic Sustainability Summit say the country needs a rethink to tackle the perennial economic crisis that often require a bailout from the International Monetary Fund. The observed lack of planning for emergencies and overspending are to be blamed for the economic crisis.
You need to communicate down, and then we need a national consensus on our economic strategy. And we must demand that from our government. So whether it's NDC or it's MPP, this is the agenda for transformation.
Participants at the just ended Three Business Sustainability Summit want government to use the tax policy to grow the private sector in order to create an enabling environment. They were reacting to the revenue bills that were recently passed in Parliament.
Spoke about the data that has been presented. And I think that marriage between data and what I call common sense economics is what we need in our lives almost every day.
The National Council of the New Patriotic Party says it will not allow any division within the party. This comes after concerns of unfairness following the party's statement barring national, regional and constituency executives and MMDCs from contesting certain members of parliament in the party's parliamentary primaries. National organizer of the party, Henry Naboachi, however, says the rationale behind this decision is to avoid division within the party.
We wanted to avoid any rancor, any division, any infighting, because when you consider the MMDCs, they are in the constituencies. They even manage the MP's common fund. So as a party, if we want to go that line, it means that we'll be creating a problem between the MP, the MMDCs, and the constituency party.
Two organized labor unions insist the payroll monitoring by the Fair Wages and Salaries Commission is a complete waste of government funds and resources. The Health Services Workers Union and the Coalition of Concerned Teachers Ghana say it is a duplication of functions as similar exercises have already been conducted by the Finance Ministry and the Controller and Accountant General's Department.
There are instances where people have made themselves car contractors. They give out car documents for people to use to access car maintenance allowance. Once they get their names on the payroll, they send a document back, and that is it. We are going after all such people.
The Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Mama Yarigam, has condemned the attacks on immigration officers stationed at Boku area, leading to the death of one of the officers. Assistant Inspector Philip Mote, stationed at Miziga, Lawrence Afari, stationed at Kurungungu, and Eric Ayidia, stationed at Polimakom border post, were attacked by unknown gunmen Monday evening. Assistant Inspector of the Immigration Service, Philip Mote, reportedly died instantly, while the two other officers are receiving treatment in hospital. Mama Yerga says the incident is most reprehensible and should not be repeated.
The Caterers declared a strike starting May 16 to demand full payment of arrears covering some 68 working days. They indicated strongly that they will only cook if government pays them their arrears in full. Since embarking on this strike more than 5 weeks ago, the impact has been great on schools in the rural areas. A visit to the St. Kizito Primary A School in the Bole district revealed enrollment figures has declined due to the strike of the caterers. Though school authorities declined speaking with the news team on camera, they admitted enrollment figures has declined.
Before the introduction of the school feeding program in this school, St. Kizito's Primary A, in 2021, the school had a population of 407 pupils. Now, after the introduction of the school feeding program in this school, enrollment increased from 407 to 515.
That's the evidence of this school feeding program. You know what? The quality of leadership must reflect in the people who are led. The policies implemented by the leader must also impact the led or improve conditions of living of those who are led. Okay, one policy that we're looking at tonight is this school feeding program. For instance, the evidence is indeed there, as you just heard my colleague Christopher Marco talk about in the northern part of the country, that it has led to an increase in enrollment, especially in these hard-to-reach communities, like that school that we showed you. But you see, the concern is, are we looking at the quality of the food given to the pupils, or the quantity, or that's the number of the children who are fed? Take a look at that. Take a look. Look at this food. This food. That's what you are feeding the children with now. And in most cases, concerns have been raised about the unhygienic nature that this food is even taken through in the process of cooking. Would you blame the caterers for cooking this, for the lack of better expression, pitiful food to feed children? Look at that. The caterers have to pre-finance the cooking in most of the cases and wait to get paid at the end of the term or a particular period agreed with government. Now, look at that. You see, we'll even show you some others that are even more worrying than this and what we are feeding our children with. Now, these caterers, at least in the Ashanti region, have been waiting for a while now, so long. They turn up angry at the office of the Ashanti Regional Minister asking for their money. This is their money because they pre-financed the cooking over a period. And the minister got angry. But I want to take a look at the traders, and you can understand how frustrated they were when they went to the minister's office. Take a look. Okay. You see, that's the minister. just snub them. He says, you hear him saying M1, this is a surprise. But you see, it's fact that most of these caterers are either members of the ruling government. We've seen that over the period, right? So they are giving these contracts to cook. And so when they pre-finance it, they are expecting that because they are party folks, they should understand the state of the economy and keep quiet. Look, some of the caterers went for loans to cook. The interest is building and would possibly erode their profits on this cooking, this school feeding that they are in. Because look, they are also in business. So the minister who is upset and the leadership of this country, will they allow their children to eat the kind of food that we are feeding other people with? Bear in mind that leadership don't rule this country with their resources. It is the resources that we give to them. So the people deserve better. That's why the caterers are demanding an increase from the poultry. I mean, what can you cook with 97 pesos? 97 pesos per child. And we're happy, like everybody's going about their business like there's really nothing wrong. They are even asking that they should be given 3 cedis per child, 3 cedis. Even that, the caterers are making sacrifices because look at the increase in the price of food items over the period. We have seen increasing amount of money allocated to the school feeding program and the corruption as well that has been unearthed in that area over the period. But look at this, the budgetary allocation over the period to school feeding. In 2020, you see this. And even though this is captured in these figures in the budget, and this we found in all the budgets presented by the finance minister, I'm going to show you because we have quotations of the finance minister to these figures. Now, allocation, I must underscore this, does not necessarily mean disbursement. So in a number of cases, even though this money has been stated there, it either doesn't come on time or the full amount is not even released to these caterers. But yet they have to cook. They have to cook to feed the children. Look at that. 969 million in 2023. That's an increase against 2022 of 881 million. 488.8 million in 2021, in 2020, 400. So every year you see an increase in the allocation. So question is, why are these school feeding caterers not being paid on time? Or why have they not been paid all this while and yet they still have to cook for their children? Because of how it's contributing to enrollment as well. So if the minister is frustrated about the frustrations of the caterers, think about the loans that they have gone to take. Think about how that is also impacting on their lives as well. That's the reality of the situation, okay? Over the years, this is it. And the number of schools that this has impacted. Look at that. The number of beneficiaries in 2022, a little over 3.6 million children. 2021, a little over 3.4 million. So every time when there's an increase in allocation to school feeding, also impacts on the number of children who are benefiting. The number of schools, a little over 10,000 in 2022, same figure in 2021, and about 9,000 in 2020. And look at the amount. And all these figures we got from the finance minister himself. Go and check it. Paragraph 1043 of the 2022 budget. It's quoted here. Mr. Speaker, the Ghana School Feeding Program fed a little over 3.4 million pupils in a little over 10,800 public basic schools with one hot nutritional meal every school-going day in 2021. You see, this is mentioned there, but never talk about the quality of the meal that they are fed with. Don't you see that? And even though we've seen the figures go up in terms of allocation, when it comes to the international benchmark of that UNESCO has even set for Africa, we are the lowest. Because according to the Africa Education Watch, this 3% allocation of our GDP is far below the 4 to 6% recommended benchmark for the education sector budget in this country. That's the reality that we're faced with. You see, I'll point you to where you can find whatever we say so that you can also do your own check. And then when you are talking about issues that are confronting this country, you are emotional and factual as well. That's the reality of the picture. Stay with me. It's all about leadership. So right after this quick break, we'll talk about leadership we have and how the people who are led contribute to the kind of leadership that we're always giving. And then we'll zoom into the school feeding matter as well. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back. This is Ghana Tonight. We're live on TV Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on 3news.com. Leadership. Everything rises and falls on leadership. But let's hear from David Ofosu-Dorte. Earlier today at the Economic Sustainability Summit that 3Business organized, his take on leadership and why things cannot be the same as we speak. Take a look.
When leaders fail and we blame followers did not check them, it gives the leaders too much comfort. We ought to re-examine our mindset. I once actually tweeted something about the fact that where you have state-owned enterprises not doing well in the public sector hands, and we privatize them, and they equally collapsed, the elite must re-examine their mindset. There's something wrong with our mindset. We actually stopped thinking long ago in this nation.
So yeah, you can disagree with him, but he says there's something wrong with our mindset. We actually stopped thinking a long time ago. And that's why we continue to do the same things and expect different results. But Professor Stephen Adair is a renowned economist and the former rector of the Ghana Institute of Management Public Administration, former chair of the Ghana Revenue Authority Board as well. And then also let me welcome Daniel Yao Demelovo, the former Auditor General. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us for this all-important conversation on Ghana Tonight. Let me start off with you, Professor Stephen Adair. Really, let's understand this. Is it that the leaders are the kind of people that we, the people, deserve, or because of how we elect our leaders, some people who don't deserve to be in leadership actually get in there?
Well, asking a chicken and an egg, which came first? But then, if you read the Bible, it's the chicken which was created first before it started laying eggs. A chicken and a hen were laid. There's no doubt at all that we have moved as a country over the years, whereby the process of electing leadership has been largely influenced by money and propaganda and sometimes deceit. But the question is, how did we get there? Initially, I think that people were willing to give people the chance on their capabilities. But over time, the politicians have let the people down so much so that it has come to a point whereby the people are saying, hey, let's get our benefits upfront. So the question is whether the leaders create the people or we get the leaders that we deserve. I think it's a symbiotic relationship. There's no doubt at all that we are getting the type of leadership we are getting because the average Ghanaian is corrupt. And therefore, the politicians are very smart and they quickly learn how to manipulate the system. However, and this is a very big, however, with a big H, when there is a true leader,
right,
he has the capability of changing the scenario and leading the people out of their status quo, because true leadership is paradigm shift. And therefore, at the end of the day, the blame falls on the quality of people that we get. After all, remember Gorbachev? Gorbachev was a prototypical communist, bred and raised as a communist, became KGB head, became a member of the Payroll, then elected president. And he decided that he would change the face of communism. And he did change. So that's the power of leadership. So I would say that the biggest is that we haven't gotten the right leader. If we get them, they will be able to change the people. People are led. And if they don't passively elect a leader.
I see. Obviously, people are led, but you keep talking about the true leaders with the quality. How can we get the so-called true leaders with the qualities that you talked about not too long ago?
Well, there is my preferred mode. I think that over time, you know, what happened in Nigeria, whereby really Mr. Obi nearly carried the day, and something that he carried the day, but for some sort of mishaps. Mm-hmm. But whichever it is, I think a time comes when the people get fed up. I think that the democratic system is very, very slow.
Right.
But eventually, it is capable of throwing up the right leadership. When the people get fed up, you know that we are seeing it at the constituency level. There are some people who have spent money and other things, and people have refused to vote them.
True.
And it's not always the highest bidder that wins the member of parliament seats. So that is one way. I think that at the end of the day, it's a supply and demand situation. Mm-hmm. At this moment, one of the saddest things is that we don't have any proper leadership training institution. I tried it in Gimpa. Unfortunately, when I was in Gimpa, you won't believe that all the 3 parliaments which were elected and the cabinet came for Gimpa for orientation and training and the rest. And of course, after me, people thought that it's no longer necessary. So at this moment, there is no institution in Ghana which even has a modicum of training of those who are elected. And I think that the supply side has been weak. The demand side has always been weak, and it is getting better because people are getting enlightened. So it's at the end of the day, strengthening both the supply and the demand side. But for me, one of my greatest disappointments that is going to slow the throwing up of the right leadership is that the middle class of Ghana, and here I'm talking about the business community, mm-hmm. the academia,
right.
tend to be aligned rather than being the objective voice. And I think that that's where we must look at. If we are people in the universities and other things should not be politically, even if they have, of course, at the end of the day, everybody votes. But it's where incubation of objectivity and analysis should come. For example, people talk about, is it Mahama or Dufour or Bawumia? But nobody is sitting down to say that what criteria should we be informing the people about so that they can objectively assess rather than the dust, how much dust is generated by NDC and MPP campaigns.
Professor Stemada, you talk about criteria. I mean, what we are seeing now is that the highest bidder is able to buy his way into leadership, is it not? I mean, so if you have money, you can talk well. I mean, you're eloquent in some cases. You get the money. Let me bring in Daniel Domelovo on this matter. If this criteria that we are seeing states that there's a monocracy, if you have money, you're able to buy your way into leadership, we stand the risk of even having criminals, for instance, funding political parties, is it not?
Why would they not? Because these are people who knows that if a right-thinking and an upright party leader or party is in leadership, mm-hmm. they may not have room to operate because illegal mining should not be allowed and some type of trades should not be allowed. So the best thing for them to do is to invest in who becomes the head of the country.
Absolutely.
And that is the reason why at times it beats you and I our minds. Why some laws cannot be enforced is because we don't know who pays the piper. And you know, the one who pays the piper is the one who causes the tune. So that is how dangerous it is. And I think the earlier Electoral Commission wakes up, the better it is for us. Otherwise, we may have criminals, people who we would like to run away from, rather putting leadership in place. The leaders themselves may not be criminals, but immediately they are funded by these criminals, they are within the control. Like I said earlier on, the one who pays the piper causes the tune. And so if he tells you that, look away, don't fight Galamsey, pretend you are fighting Galamsey, that is what is going to happen. We say, don't do this, just pretend that you are doing something, that is going to happen. So I think that having clarity on that, transparency and accountability on who is funding who, so to come into, even in the public sector, when we want to address corruption, we must understand who brought you into office, because we see so many contracts going to a particular entity or person. Some people have so many contracts, they almost win all contracts, and these contracts don't even go through any competitive process. How do they get it? So if we get the sources of funding these political activities, it may give all of us a better understanding why Daniel is winning all these contracts. When people in public office, when people in authority know that they will get away with offense, they will commit it every day. They will gamble with our money every day. It is only when they know that you can't get away with it. I've been telling colleagues in some of the international financial institutions, I said, look, guys, you are not able to gamble with the money of World Bank, IMF, etc., because there's no way you will get away with even $1. You know it. You will be found out, and they will do whatever it takes to collect that money from you and make sure they have nothing to do with you ever again. So you will not dare to misuse their monies. But when people in public office, they take or misuse money, and at times what you even hear from the leadership is like condoning that crime, and or they don't even see it as anything. It becomes only offense only when the person is perceived as a political enemy.
True.
And I think we are not going to get there. So we need to reach a point where there must be consequences for misuse of public funds.
The consequences, and as to whether there's any form of deterrent. But Professor Stephen Adey, you earlier mentioned that the average Ghanaian is corrupt. What exactly do you mean?
What I'm saying is that they are willing to be induced by money. And I think that it's not that people say it's poverty. I says, no, our parents were poorer, but they will not sold their conscience. I think over time they have been conditioned. And, you know, I'm a rural person, so I go to my village quite often. And I know that during the last elections, especially, it was people getting, say, 32-inch television and 1,000. That determined who became the NPP parliamentary candidate. And the equivalent goes. And so the people are now almost seeing it as the cocoa season for them when there's elections. That is why they get so angry when the parliamentarians and the party people decide that some people should go unopposed. The people on the ground get angry, the party people, not so much of the fact that they don't like the person, but they think that they are being denied the ability to extort money from the candidates. That's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the average party member is just in the money, have become part of the monocracy. It's the leaders who have let us down, because if you're a leader, you must be willing to take your people above a certain threshold. But they are, look, let us bribe our way, we become MPs, and then for 4 years at least, we are going to enjoy.
You see,
and reap our.
It's a bleak picture that you paint for our democracy. I mean, and look, we're going to see a number of things happening. The NDC is in the process of electing its parliamentary candidate and a flag bearer. The NPP has also just announced its roadmap for their own elections. So you talk about the cocoa season for the delegates. The mindset is that when the leaders get there, they forget about them, so they have to also milk them. But you see, it all amounts to this case of corruption that we're talking about. Mr. Domolevo, finally, if things continue this way, we will ever win the war or the fight against corruption in this country?
Let me say that in years back, I read from our constitution, if I'm not mistaken, I think Article 25 or 26A or 8 or something of that nature, which provides, no, 36 rather, which provides for eradication of corruption. So I was repeating it everywhere. But nowadays, I talk about reduction of corruption, because I've come to realize and accept that corruption is not going to go away anytime soon. We may not win the fight completely against corruption, just like diseases. But shall we ever dare to say we will stop fighting diseases? We will all die. It's the same with corruption. If we decide that it's enough, we will not fight corruption anymore. It will take all of us, and we shall go. So the cost of fighting corruption is by far lower than the cost of not fighting corruption. So we cannot help than to continue fighting. It is like any crime. It has been with us since Adam. The fact that people will continue stealing does not mean the police should not do their work. The fact that we shall continue having armed robbers or armed robbery, etc., or robbery, does not mean since it is going on, the police should fold their arms and say, well, since we cannot eradicate it, let us just go on. So it's the same approach or thinking I have about corruption. Corruption is not going to be eradicated today or tomorrow, but then we must not give up fighting it. But because look at it, even when we are fighting it, see how it's biting us. So come to think about when we give up and say, no, we will not fight corruption anymore, I think we will be doomed.
Well, and that's the reality of the situation that you have just pointed out to us. If things don't change, I thank you so much, Chairman, for your time and indeed your thoughts on this very important issue. Daniel Yao Demolovo is a former Auditor General of the Republic of Ghana, and to you as well, Professor Stephen Adey, a former chair of the Ghana Revenue Authority Board and also former rector of GIMPA. Many other things that he's done. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time. And for you out there as well, you have a say in this leadership conversation. We have a number of you who sent us comments, which we will get into as we go on the show. But we're following this quite closely. An immigration officer stationed in Boku in the Upper East region has been shot dead by unknown gunmen on Monday evening. That was yesterday. 2 other officers are currently on admission at the Boku Presbyterian Hospital and the Tamale Teaching Hospital receiving treatment for gunshot wounds. That's what we're learning right now. And so I want to give you just a quick update on this even before we get into this school feeding conversation. The Honorable Stephen Yakubu is the Upper East Regional Minister. Let's go on to the telephone. Thank you for your time. You're chair of this Regional Security Council. What briefing have you received about this incident?
Well, yes. As you might have heard, yes, one unfortunately passed on. Our heart respect goes to the family of these individuals, very hard-working people in the Boku area who are trying to keep our borders safe and doing their work legitimately. But the other 2 who were hit, one is in Tamale Hospital, and then one is in Border Hospital. So this is what we have.
I see. But can you tell us, I mean, I'm talking about the briefing that you received. What exactly happened?
Well, yes. These 3 individuals came to town. One is from Kolukungu, one is from the other one is from the Kuziga area, and then one is from the Boku area. So they were in Mofti. They came in their private car to eat. and then to go back. So when they finished eating, and then they were going back. And that is when these unfortunate things happened. Along stretch that have been notoriously, people have been shooting people around those very areas. So this is exactly what happened. Around 8 o'clock in the night in Boku. But prior to that, there were gunshots as usual, gunshots in Boku happened earlier on. It was after that this incident also happened. Very, very unfortunate. I can tell you that this is basically in my time as a regional minister, nothing was for a very long time. That government worker, unfortunately has been targeted. But we think that it wasn't something that was a target or something. Maybe it was just same bullet.
I see.
That hit them. But unfortunately, one part.
But based on the preliminary information that you have, is there a specific reason why these 3 immigration officers were attacked?
In Boku, it's very difficult to be able to explain why sometimes even people decide to take their guns and start shooting. We all know that the place has been very stable in terms of security, but we don't know. We are still trying to find out were they targeted, why these 3 individuals, the person know them, what happened. We don't know. We are trying very hard, the security services is trying very hard to get to the bottom of it. And we will get to the bottom of it. And then the perpetrators will be caught and brought to justice. So that is what we are doing. I have tasked my security couples to make sure that we get to the bottom of the matter and arrest whoever did this heinous crime on these 3 individuals.
I see. So it is established that these officers, one of who has been killed, were not actually in uniform when they were attacked.
Yes. My understanding is that, 8 o'clock in the night is dark. Somebody might be hiding somewhere. The police station is the walled police station. Somebody might be hiding behind the wall. Someone may be hiding. I hear there were some buses there. Someone may be hiding behind the bars, something like that. So it is very difficult. It's not as if it's an open space or an open place where if someone is moving along, you will see the person. It was in the night, around 8 o'clock in the night. So what we are doing also is to lead the town up. And, so far things have been there, almost about 500 to, maybe about 1,000 or so street lights have been given to MC and putting them up to make sure that we lead the place. But obviously, you cannot lead the whole entire town. So I'm sure the person was hiding somewhere. And that is why we are trying to find out, was it a targeted killing? Was it just that any car that was passing was shot into? What was the reason? Of course, they were not wearing uniforms, and they were not also in a marked vehicle, So we are trying to find out exactly why these individuals were hit.
I see, but if I get it right, you said this incident happened the location closer to the police station, the Boku Divisional Police Station. If this is the case, as you're saying, were there police personnel there at this police station when this incident happened? Did they try to offer any form of help to the persons, the immigration officers, as at the time they were attacked?
It is not as if somebody will walk into their car and attack them. Someone will be maybe probably meters away, and the car is passed and they shoot into it. That is what happens in Boku. In most cases, they don't come to the car and stop the car and shoot into the car. No, the car will be a moving car, and someone will be hiding somewhere, some meters away. I mean, I'm not a security person. I don't know how long AK-47 or whatever gun that they use will go. But if the person is meters away, it's very difficult. He shoots and then he moves away. That is usually what happens in Boku. You understand? So it's not as if he was very close to the culprit, or he shot there and came to the car. No, it's because, of course, when the gunshots were heard, of course, the police, closer to the police station, of course, the police will come out to find out what is happening. But by the time the person is not close by, he's far away and he's shooting into a moving car. That is what happened.
Anyway, but thank you, Mr. Stephen Yakubu. Chapa is regional minister on this. I know that, as you indicated, investigations are ongoing into this matter. But the member of parliament for Boku Central, Mama Yariga, has also issued a statement. We have a copy of it, condemning the attack on the immigration officers, as you see on the screen there, stationed at Boku area, leading to the death of one of them, as Assistant Inspector Philip Mote, stationed at the Misiga, Lawrence Afari, stationed at Kulungungu, and then Erika Idia, also stationed at the Polimakom border post, were attacked by unknown gunmen yesterday in the evening, and we're learning from the minister that around 8 p.m. yesterday, the Assistant Inspector Philip Mote, unfortunately, has been reported dead, while the two other officers are receiving treatment. That's the information that we do have now. The lawmaker is calling for an in-depth investigation into the matter. Dr. Victor Doke is a security analyst and also a lecturer at the Kofi Annan International Peacekeeping Training Center. Dr. Victor Doke is going to connect with us on Zoom shortly to take a quick one from him on this, especially because of how this happened and what we're learning, that there is no established motive as yet, whether this was targeted killing or, as the minister is saying, this particular spot where these people were killed is a crime-prone area where a number of incidents of this nature have happened before. Quickly, Dr. Victor Doke, thank you so much for joining us on Ghana Tonight. First off, you've seen how things have played out in the area and what the minister has been saying. What should the investigation be looking out for?
Well, thank you very much. To the question, yes, not only the people in Boku, but it's a general thing that a trend happening in the country now. Now you take Boku, you take the recent happenings in Nalerigo and elsewhere, then you know that it's a kind of wave sort of sweeping across, that these youths who have in their possession illegal weapons can now challenge authority, the state authority. So if they feel aggrieved or they feel their issues are not being addressed, their needs and wants are not being addressed, then they take up these arms and then perpetrate these kind of crimes. However, the aspect of the state security in their duties, they have to ensure that the areas where they are going or doing their operations, they have proper intelligence. Now, before you go into an area, you have to assess the risk factors, the threats, before you enter these areas. It is a known fact. Now, when you take the northern part of Ghana now, and you take Boku specifically, there's a proliferation of weapons in that area. So you need to be very careful as a security personnel or a group working for the state to either be keeping the peace or in working towards resolution of any other conflict. So the youth have now become emboldened because, you know, when you have a weapon, it signifies power and authority. And so they can now go out, whether in groups or individuals, engage in sporadic shootings just to announce or send out their grievances. And that's always a sign for these state security personnel to also pick up. and then also prevent these acts from happening. Now, the other issue we can look at is how can we put in early warning systems? It seems our early warning systems to detect these kind of activities are not prompt or apt.
I see.
Now,
Dr. Doke, I'll ask that
should.
you put your video on for me because we're not seeing you. But there are some who say the attack on the immigration officers, who in a way are also obviously are security officers, may be a targeted attack. And even though the minister did not say this, he indicated that they are actually investigating to establish exactly what happened. In your view, taking into consideration all of these possible factors, what should the investigation process be taking into consideration now that we understand that this actually is being investigated by the Regional Security Council, as the minister has indicated, and also taking into consideration what has happened previously as well? I want to find out from you your thoughts on this particular issue that is going forward. Hello, Doc. Doc, if you can hear me, I mean, there's those who say that the attack on the immigration officers, in a way, may be as a result of how the alleged killing of some civilians in February was managed. I mean, to what extent could there be a linkage in those two events?
There's no justification for these youths to now attack the state security personnel. You know what the law states about that. It's just criminal. You cannot. But however, there are some grievances on the part of these youths. I mean, some of them have their relatives who have been victims, innocently roped in these kind of activities. So they are aggrieved. Now, the issue happens. What do we do as an institution, be it from the state, civil society, or the community? We just go in, send military personnel, separate the two factions from clashing, and then that's it. We see Parliamentary Select Committee on Defense go in, speak, minister goes in and speaks, and then the substantive issues are not tackled. There are grievances on either parts, i.e. the youth specifically, because they carry out these activities. So we need to address all outstanding issues for people now to be satisfied that their issues are addressed. Otherwise, we'll have people who are aggrieved. People will retaliate in the future. No matter how long it takes, they will retaliate. And they will still have incidences, isolated incidences such as attacks on either sides. But there's no justification for any youth or group of youth to now attack the state institution or state personnel because they may have fell victim or their relatives have fell victim to the attacks that happened. There's no justification. The way forward is just about engagement. We do not have the sustained engagement happening. We only put in ad hoc, temporal, what they call the direct prevention measures that addresses just imminent, immediate threats or armed violence. And then we leave the issues at that. If we were to have sustained engagements going forward, there is a standardized procedure where issues are being dealt with.
We'll see how things play out in the coming days on this. But Dr. Doke, thank you so much for your time on Ghana Tonight. And this is an issue that we're staying the steam on in the coming days. But another issue that we started this whole show with tonight, this conversation, is the school feeding program. This is in the Ashanti region because the traders have decided to lay down their tools. And guess what? Who are the receiving end of this? Children. This is what happened.
We cooked 2020 for the COVID food. They paid some, they didn't pay some. We lamented a lot, it didn't reach anywhere. And now we've also cooked 3 terms They only paid one. And even that one, they didn't pay the full amount. Meanwhile, we all bear witness to last year, how food prices went up. They didn't consider us. Waiting for the next payment and the increment as well. And we also want to hear from our gender ministry. What is the new development? What are they going to tell us? What are we expecting? What should we expect? So without that, I don't think we will cook.
Legitimate concerns, but when they went to the minister's office, this was his reaction. Take a look. The Bosa South Member of Parliament, Dr. Clement Apak, and also the Deputy Ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament is on the telephone with us. Dr. Clement Apak, thank you for your time on Ghana Tonight. So you've seen this video, you've seen the concerns of the caterers. What would the committee, as a member, would you recommend be done so that the caterers get their money?
Well, first of all, let me say good evening to you and good evening to viewers. And to indicate that only last week, I had a question filed to the Minister for Gender, Children and Social Protection on the school feeding program as far as Bosa South is concerned. And the reason why I filed the question was precisely because of some of these occurrences. Now, with specific references to the video you showed and what occasioned the caterers to go to the premises of the Regional Coordinating Council with the intent of expressing their displeasure to the minister and with the hope of getting some resolution, my opinion is this. Government has decided to pay lip service to some of the most important social interventions that we all know ought to receive the utmost attention. The caterers, by and large, are drawn from the MPP, but even so, it is not right and it is not fair to have them continue to prepare meals several times without getting paid. Many of them have taken loans, and in fact, their creditors are pursuing them. But Alfred, is it not surprising that year in, year out, government would list the school feeding program under government flagship programs? And for this year in question, a whopping 969 million has been allocated, and yet these women are not being paid. It is not just even the issue of the arrears, but how do we expect anyone to be able to perform magic by preparing a decent meal with an amount of 97 pesos? Is it even enough to prepare food for a pet cat or a pet dog? We ought to get our priorities right. So whilst it is the case that the school feeding program is actually housed under the auspices of the Ministry of Gender, Children and Social Protection, the Committee on Education has an interest, and I have a personal interest in its functionality. Alfred, the purpose of this intervention is worthy of celebrating. The intervention is supposed to prevent short-term starvation, and by doing so, it also enhances enrollment figures and retains the students in the about 15,000 public basic schools in the country. So when you have a situation where, for example, a president and the government chooses to apply public resources in excess of 300 million towards the construction of a personally pledged cathedral, when you have situations where a president chooses to fly in chartered private jets to the detriment of allocating monies to feed the most vulnerable in society, it causes you to ask the question where our priorities are. And this is not a matter that should be left to the politicians alone. All Ghanaians must weigh in, because this is the future of the nation, and we are jeopardizing it by not applying the resources to the most vulnerable.
You said it right. And I thank you so much for this. And that is something that will definitely would continue to highlight, not only today, but in the coming days. Dr. Clement Park, appreciate your time. And is a member of Parliament for the Bosa South constituency, the deputy ranking on the Education Committee of Parliament. Thank you so much, viewers, for staying with us here on Ghana Tonight. On behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company. Join us same time tomorrow. I am Alfred Kanse. Good night.